News Now Houston?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
The 4 that we've been going on the past few weeks.
Good.
We haven't been
Houston, Summary Judgment,
American News.
Facebook, and American News Media Center.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pens. You got
Pen.
a pen. Okay.
And there's a whole
We should
pile
start.
of them.
Oh, look at that.
There's a whole pile of
Awesome.
them someplace. Let it rip, girl. My water. Where'd that?
I do you have it? Because I had it. You have it.
You
Okay.
moved the trash barrel that I want to sit
Well, I was going to give it to her as a bucket to throw up
Oh.
in, but there was
I
stuff
have
in
it.
it.
I have it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is an emergency This is on your emergency broadcast system. Master Control is currently throwing up in the bucket.
Please don't say that.
I won't. Your father may be watching. Oh boy. That's gonna have to go up another 3 inches. I can't get my legs under there.
Now, I will discuss the Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter today, but please don't get excited. We're going to disagree, but don't get excited.
All I want to do is say this is an innocent video of a bad cop.
But
Nothing more.
but I think it is going to bring up the other stuff, and that's okay. But I don't want you to get overexcited.
I'm
Okay.
not going to get overexcited. So you got to tell me when so I can hit the button.
Because one thing I noticed that he posted that it was Good afternoon and welcome to AM News Network presents Summary Judgment. We're transmitting live from the American News Studio in Harwinton, in Central Connecticut. We have transmitted for the past 5 years from Harwinton, but recently moved the studio. I'm attorney Rachel Baird, and I practice in Harwinton. This is my legal investigator, Ed Peruta. We've been together since 2007, and we've been doing this show since 2014.
2007.
Congratulations.
That's like a marriage.
I know. Wait, we received a video today.
Hold on. Everybody needs to say happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday, Ed.
July 8th was 1 year that I've had my new heart in my chest.
Congratulations.
So, and it's working fine, and I intend to, I guess they're anonymous, but I intend to write a letter to the donor's family, thanking them for the heart.
And since this show is going to discuss Torrington and the Torrington Police Department, the Torrington Court, and the way they handle cases, we're definitely going to send this to Cablevision to replay on Saturday night at 9 o'clock on public access television.
Right.
Okay, so let's get going because this video is so
troubling.
Well, it's troubling and it's timely.
Very timely.
With police accountability in the news, excessive force in the news, ways of handling situations in the news. And this incident happened back in December 2019. And my understanding is no progress has been made on any contacts with the city about the incident or a complaint that I guess was filed by Mr. Johnson.
Just hold on for a minute. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Are we ready to play the video?
Just hold on before you do that.
Oh, God. This is going to be quality control to make sure everything's going out okay. Could you start playing it now? Okay, let's go.
Good morning.
How you doing? What's going on with you and the neighbor downstairs? Well, I wouldn't really call her a tenant.
here. She's her mother pays $150 a week. I was trying to help her out, but she's chased everybody away, and she got you guys following her around. What, 3 times, 3 days, 3 times. She calls you pretty good.
You're avoiding my question.
What
happened tonight? This morning.
I went down and knocked on her door and said that I was, because you guys sent me a message at 2 a.m. that said that I have to give 24 hours notice, right? To
what? You're a landlord. You should know your policy as to what you can and what you cannot do.
I know what I can do, but
Okay,
she
so
said
what
the
happened?
police called. No, she didn't say. I got a recorded message from an officer that said he was the police. I don't know. And he said that I have to give 24 hours notice and that she's filing something in court. So I called her mother and told her mother, and I went down and knocked on her door and told her I'd like to take pictures of her room, right? Because I have to get, and she said, no, you're not coming in, fuck you, and on and on and on. And so I said, okay, tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock I'm going to come down and take pictures, because that's what it said. And I talked to her mother at length about how to get her out of here. I guess I'm going to have to, I guess she says she's filing papers in court.
What does her mother have to do with this, though?
Her mother is the only one who pays anything.
She's the tenant.
Who?
Person who's downstairs.
Okay.
She's the tenant. So the only person you got to deal with is her, not her mother.
No, apparently I have to deal with
As
you
far as that
guys.
go,
Okay.
we're here constantly. Something has to be done at this point.
About what?
About
Let's get
what's
her out
going on between you, your tenant, and yourself. It's not always one side, I'm sure.
I've never called you.
So you don't have to call us. We're here enough to realize something's wrong.
Okay.
Something's going on.
Okay.
So what happened today when you went downstairs? You said you
I
knocked
knocked on her door and
Yep.
she came out. What? I said, I'd just like to take some pictures of your room, because she called me at 2:30 in the morning.
Yep.
You know, and she said no. She
Did
said,
you put your hands on her?
no.
No.
I know better than that.
Good ID?
How about a business card?
Not take your ID, sir.
Why?
I'm asking for your ID.
And I'm saying I don't. You came into my place of business.
Yep.
Here's my business card.
I know. Okay, let me see your ID, please.
No.
You're not gonna give me your ID.
No. Well, let me see.
Officer Quarles, badge 40.
Okay, why? Okay, let me start recording here.
You know what? Give me your phone.
Excuse me, I said.
Right now you're being detained, okay? Stop resisting.
What the fuck?
Stop resisting right now. I'm telling you. Stop resisting. Give me your left hand. Change 4 keys. Spread your legs for me, please. You don't have any weapons on you at all?
No.
Put it in my car for a second. Let's go.
I need to lock the front door.
We're not going anywhere. We're going to go sit in my car for a moment. Right now you're being detained. You understand that? You're not under arrest. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'd like to. Is that your camera? It's on? Your Officer 4 camera.
Yeah. Officer 4.
40.
Badge 40.
Badge.
Call 263 to come and pick up.
This is a lot to take in, Ed. I feel like I need to watch this a couple times.
Listen, you can watch it again, but I'm gonna bring you up to it. A Torrington, Connecticut police officer, and accompanied by another Torrington police officer wearing a body camera, entered the business establishment of this gentleman, Kent Johnson. And he's got a website out there on YouTube, Kent Johnson, and he's from Torrington, Connecticut. So if you go to YouTube and search for Kent Johnson, it'll say Torrington, Connecticut. Now, the two officers walk in, and they are there to, I guess, inquire or investigate regarding his giving a tenant 24 hours notice to vacate the property. The tenant is a female. The tenant past tenant is a female. The rent for the female is paid by the female's mother, but it is a week-to-week tenancy in the state of Connecticut. There's no lease for a year. It's not a month-to-month. It's a week-to-week tenancy. And in a week-to-week tenancy, you can give 24 hours notice to vacate the property.
Well, the issue that I find surprising in that is usually when you contact the police about a matter like this,
Right.
they say, that's a civil matter.
Right.
That's a housing matter. It's not a criminal matter. The courts will handle it. Unless it's a criminal lockout where you change the lock and the person can't get back into their apartment, that is a criminal matter, although a lot of times the police will still say, we're not handling that.
Okay.
That's a civil
matter.
matter.
So now let me just...
So the question arises, why are they so interested in this case?
Let me just continue up until I know where you started taking notes. So the officer is Quarles is his name?
Sorry, Quarles, Quarles.
Officer Quarles is discussing the situation with Mr. Johnson. And during the course of the conversation, Officer Quarles, who claims that he's been there numerous times.
He says, we're here often enough.
Right. Wants Mr. Johnson to produce identification. Mr. Johnson offers him his business card. That's not good enough. He wants ID.
And you know what that is, Ed? That's called provoking a situation. Police officers, when they have nothing on you, they will provoke the situation by asking for something or ordering you to do something and then claiming you didn't comply. That's provocation.
Now, so at some point in time during this interchange, Mr. Johnson takes his cell phone, and you can see it in his hand, and he says, I'm going to record this. At that point in time, the officer slaps the phone out of his hand, grabs his hand, starts to tussle with him, turns him around, pushes him forward. The left part of Mr. Johnson's head strikes a bookshelf, and he cuffs him up and he turns him around, and you can see the blood. And this is all recorded on the body cam of another officer.
But bear in mind that Mr. Johnson had no idea whether that body cam video was going to be preserved, whether it was going to be magically erased or lost, or the body cam wasn't working that day, or maybe it had been shut off. These things happen in police departments. So you cannot rely on the police department having body cam footage.
Now, I've spoken to Kent Johnson, and Kent Johnson has clearly said that he does not consider it to be a racial incident. He's very firm in the fact that this is not a racial incident. Black police officer, white business owner. But I said to Mr. Johnson, and I'll say here today, this incident occurred in December of 2019.
Right.
It's up on the internet. He had to fight under the Freedom of Information Act to get the body cam video of the officer in his store during his arrest for, I guess, interfering with an investigation or whatever.
Interfering with an officer, resisting arrest, and breach of peace. And let me just tell you, Ed, his case has been pending in Torrington Superior Court since December 2019. Right. He's representing himself. If you look at the judicial website, no attorney is listed for him. I want to know why he had to make an FOI request to get this body cam footage when the prosecutor should have been giving it to him right away in the course of discovery.
As his own attorney.
But you know what? They don't do that. When you represent yourself in court, they're very reluctant to give you anything. They want you to force you to hire an attorney, and Mr. Johnson hasn't done that. So he should
My
have gotten it.
understanding, they wanted him to pay a small fine, make it go away. They wanted to nolly the case. He refused. He's put himself onto the jury list.
Now let me ask you, the refusal to nolly the case is because he wants it dismissed, correct?
I didn't ask him
Okay.
that, but I guess he has been told that if you take a nolly, you take any deal, you're prohibited from seeking anything civilly. Okay?
I could
Now,
comment on that, but I don't want to
Okay,
confuse things.
No, don't want to confuse anything. What I'm trying to say is this, and we'll watch it again, and watch very carefully when he says he wants some ID, and I can't hear because it's going out, we don't hear it in here.
There is no reason for that officer to ask him for ID. He is provoking the situation just like they do with J.C. Playford in Jacksonville now and in San Diego before. They would provoke the situation by pushing him back, not letting him record, and then when he reacted, he was the one that got arrested
If
for
I
interfering.
was Mr. Johnson or the investigator for his attorney, the first thing I would do is I would go to the phone call from the complainant. Did they identify who was trying to get her out by name? Then I would want to listen to the dispatch tape to find out if the dispatcher, when they were dispatching the officers, stated the name of the person who owned the business that they walked into. So, yeah, we know who you are. It's like me in Wethersfield, where a Wethersfield policeman comes up and goes, "Hi, Ed, how you doing?"
And he wasn't driving a car.
No. Now, here's my opinion. This occurred in December of 2019. And I'm looking for comments. And I'm not saying it's a bad police officer. He fucked up, but I'm not going to criticize the officer. Damn sure not going to criticize the business owner.
I would withhold criticism of that officer except for this incident that we just saw. Pending requesting a CAD report, a computer aided dispatch report, of every arrest this officer has made in the past year or two. Look at those arrests and request the body cam.
And has he ever been Brady'd? Has he ever had any other complaints made against him? But here's what I was trying to say.
Because like they say about criminals, Ed, you never get caught the first time.
Yeah.
There's always times previous.
A shoplifter shoplifts 99,000 times and then he gets caught once.
And you see an officer do something like this, you have to wonder.
What I'm trying to say is this. Again, this video, body camera footage, was recorded in December of 2019. That's 6 months, 7 months ago. I want you, the people on the other side of the cameras, to reverse the roles. All I want is a white police officer walking into a business owned by a minority, and the white police officer does what this black police officer did. That's all I want you to do. I just want you to reverse the players in this video. In July of 2020, with everything that's going on in this country, and just think, what was going on back in December of 19? And could that occur today? Well, obviously it probably could. But if the roles are reversed and there's a body camera that shows what I just saw, a businessman being thrown up against the wall to the point where he cuts his head and there's blood running down his face, and I got to tell you, it doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to say that that police officer should have called dispatch and said, "Look, I need EMS here. I've got an injured suspect, or I've got an injured individual." He should have called EMS.
Because if you hit a head hard enough to make it bleed like that, there's a possibility of a concussion. You have to get those things checked out.
You're not, listen, you're not under arrest. You're being detained.
Oh, that's
But we're
another
going
one.
to take you out to the cruiser. to talk to you.
He was under arrest.
Because there were video cameras in the business. I got to get him away from these video cameras.
And I don't know if it's Officer Quarles or Sergeant Quarles. I
don't give a shit what it is.
I'll just call him Officer.
I'm going to quarrel with him.
I'm gonna call him Officer for now. He should have had his body cam on. Where's the footage for his body cam?
I don't know.
That should have been provided as well.
If he had one on.
Yeah, and if he didn't, we need to know
in
why.
In December, there still wasn't this 100% compliance with body cameras.
Well, I don't know when Torrington
But I'll tell you this. The chief of police of Torrington, Connecticut is Billy Baldwin. William Baldwin is the chief. William Baldwin is a retired lieutenant with the Connecticut State Police. And he was in charge of the troop in Canaan. Okay? Trooper and now Chief Billy Baldwin was trained as a state trooper by my brother Steve, was his field training officer, because he came up and told me that. Well, shame on Billy Baldwin if he doesn't do something immediately about this tape. And I'm talking about calling up the prosecutor and saying, look, I'm firing this officer, drop the charges against Mr. Johnson, and I'm disciplining, suspending, or firing the officer.
Well, you've gotten us into the next area of discussion, and that's what happens when these kinds of cases go to court. Because prosecutors have eyes and ears as well, and they can watch that video just like you and me, and they know what's wrong with that video. They know what's wrong with what that police officer did. So you ask, why isn't the case dropped? There was no breach of peace there. Do you know how hard it is to breach the peace of a police officer? It's very difficult. It's a different standard.
I'll tell you, this is 20...
Unless he breached the peace of the tenant. I thought of that. Is that part of it? I don't know.
Okay, let me explain something to you. This is 2020, and I'm now 71 years old. Let me see, 90 would have been, what, 30 years ago? I'll tell you what I would have done 30 years ago. I would have published the number of the Torrington Police Department. Anybody can find it, even from News Now Houston or whoever. Anybody can find the number for the Torrington, Connecticut Police Department. I would call their main number, hopefully on a recorded line. Don't get nasty with them. Ask to speak to the chief or leave a message for the chief. And explain to them what you think about Mr. Officer Quarles' demeanor and actions on that YouTube video. 30 years ago, I'd have had the number all over the screen telling everybody to call, but don't call more than once because they can arrest you for harassing phone calls.
Well, let's get into a more difficult subject because I think you may have taken two different positions. You may have taken one position in this case and a different position in another. And what I'm talking about is, if you read some comments under the video posted at Mr. Johnson's YouTube site, people seem to know him in town, and some people seem to support him, and some people appear not to support him for various reasons.
Well, I know all about that.
Which I'm not going to go into because anybody can go read the comments. But it doesn't matter what the history is with this person, how many times the police department has been there, what they think about him, what they've heard. It's no excuse
for what happened.
For what happened. It is no excuse for what happened.
I agree. I agree. And I'm sitting here going like this. You see, I'm trying to say, like Mr. Johnson, that this wasn't a racially motivated incident. A black officer didn't walk in thinking he's going to beat up a white business owner. He wasn't going to get him on his knees and shoot him. He wasn't going to put him in a chokehold so he couldn't breathe. There was no intent to do that. That's a bad fucking officer. Red, white, blue, green, black, whatever color. That's a bad officer. And how many times have we said on this program, I've said it, nobody supports law enforcement more than I do. You can support it as much as I or we do, but you can't support it more than I or we do. But we do not support we do not support bad officers.
Right.
Regardless of their color. And I go all the way back to Hartford.
I mean, let's be fair. They tried the same thing in the George Floyd case out in Minneapolis. some people started to say, oh, but you know, his blood test, or he's got this history, or he had that. I don't care. It doesn't matter what Mr. Floyd ever did in his life. That was murder. I'm sorry.
This video begins with the officer body camera recording Quarles walking into the store. Okay? The name of the store is in the initial frames of video. You can see the name of the store, and he walks in, and there is Mr. Johnson. What can I do for you? What are you here for? What's going on? And then they begin to talk. But nothing warranted that man being detained in handcuffs and slammed into a goddamn bookcase. And oh, I forgot.
Go ahead.
Stop resisting! Stop resisting! Stop struggling! I didn't see him resisting or struggling at all, but I believe Quarles was trying to make the record on video that there was a resistance going on.
Right, right.
Fuck him.
So, when it gets to court and you have a case like this, and it's dismissed, that gives a person opportunity to file 1983 civil rights action. But if you get them to plead to anything, even creating a public disturbance, which, you know, is a $90 fine, then that prevents them from ever suing for civil rights. You have to prevail in the proceeding below. If a case is nollied, it's automatically dismissed within 13 months. And if it wasn't nollied in exchange for something, for example, if you do counseling in exchange for a nollie, no, that doesn't count. You can't do anything in exchange for the nollie. But if you do get a nollie and it's dismissed in 13 months, you're all set to go sue. And there is case law that says even before that, you're all set to sue as well.
This is from WTNH Channel 8, ABC, New Haven, Connecticut. And it says, Connecticut Police Accountability Task Force recommends new rules for police across the state. Now let's go down and see what those rules are.
But Ed, there are rules now, and it's called the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, that prevent police officers from doing things like they do now, and that doesn't seem to stop them. So what rules is a police accountability task force going to make when people don't even uphold their oath to support the Constitution?
Okay, you're 100% correct. But what I can't find it right now.
Because that's where it all begins.
One of the new policies, rules, whatever they're proposing is, you know the guy that was wearing the body camera that saw Quarles do that?
Yeah.
He should have pinched Quarles. He should report Quarles to the department for excessive force.
You know what would be really interesting?
Where is it?
You know what would be really interesting? To get the police to report and see how it matches up with the video. Because we have a lot of experience in this area.
Looking at a police report and then finding out there's stuff missing.
Yeah. And the biggest example we have of this is from a trial in Waterbury 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep.
Where there was an issue of whether somebody was tampering with evidence. And the police officer wrote in his report that the arrestee had indicated that the gun was in a lockbox in the house.
Right. And it was in the warrant.
Oh, yeah.
It was in the warrant to arrest, which they eventually went for, okay? And it was in the police report.
So when they went to look in the lockbox, the gun wasn't there. Oh, so you're misleading us, you're tampering with evidence, you're whatever, which, by the way, is a felony. Well, when we got the body cam footage...
We went through it.
We went through it.
We listened to everything she did or didn't say.
And she said the gun is locked in the house.
Right.
Meaning a trigger lock.
Right.
Police officers know what a trigger lock is.
Right.
And I asked the officer on the stand, I said if it wasn't for... First I made him admit that what was in his report wasn't true.
And regardless of what happened after that, when they finally located the firearm, it had a trigger lock on it.
Yep.
And then, and I got to tell you, it was found in a bucket of paint in the basement.
But it was locked in the house.
The weapon was perfectly cleaned at home. They washed it off in the sink. They did everything. We know for a fact that that firearm was disassembled and put back together again, and it was put together wrong when it got to the state lab for examination. The state lab guy testified that it must have been taken apart. It was being fired in the backyard. It went into a can of paint. It came out, and all of a sudden it doesn't work. He says somebody put the firearm together improperly.
Wait, we actually have video, the body cam video up on our summary judgment website, excuse me, YouTube site. But back to the main purpose of why I brought that up. When I asked that officer, if it wasn't for the body cam video, would you be up there testifying under oath still that she had said the gun is in a lockbox? And he said yes. So I would be interested to see how Officer Quarles and his fellow officer, if he did a supplemental, characterized this incident at the shop. And that's what needs to be explored.
Was there or is there an internal affairs complaint against Officer Quarles? And if there is or was, who was the complainant? And if there was or is, who are the witnesses to what happened? That body camera footage, that officer that saw the whole thing going down, and you know that after that incident, those two officers talked.
So let's watch it again.
And can you pause when I tell you to pause? Okay.
Good morning.
How you doing? Okay. What's going on with you and the neighbor downstairs, Lieutenant?
Well, I wouldn't really call her a tenant. She didn't get mail here. She's her mother pays $150 a week. I was trying to help her out, but she's chased everybody away, and she got you guys following her around. What, 3 times? 3 days, 3 times. She calls you pretty good.
You're avoiding my question.
What?
happened tonight? This morning.
I went down and knocked on her door and said that I was, because you guys sent me a message at 2 a.m. that said that I have to give 24 hours notice, right? To
what? You're a landlord. You should know your policy as to what you can and what you cannot do.
I know what I can do, but
Okay,
she
so
said
what
the
happened?
police called. No, she didn't say. I got a recorded message from an officer that said he was a police. I don't know, and he said that I have to give 24 hours notice and that she's filing something in court. So I called her mother and told her mother, and I went down and knocked on her door and told her I'd like to take pictures of her room, right? Because I have to get. And she said, no, you're not coming in. Fuck you, and on and on and on. And so I said, okay, tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, I'm going to come down and take pictures, because that's what it said. And I talked to her mother at length about how to get her out of here. I guess I'm going to have to. I guess she says she's filing papers in court.
What does her mother have to do with this, though?
Her mother is the only one who pays anything.
She's the tenant.
Who?
Person who's downstairs.
Okay.
She's the tenant. So the only person you have to deal with is her, not her mother.
No, apparently I have to deal
As
with you
far as that
guys.
go,
Okay.
we're here constantly and constantly. Something has to be done at this point.
About what?
About
Let's get
what's
around
going on between you, your tenant, and yourself. It's not always one side, I'm sure.
I've never called you.
So you don't have to call us. We're here enough to realize something's wrong.
Okay.
Something's going on.
Okay.
So what happened today when you went downstairs? You said you
I knocked on her door and
Yep.
she came out. What? I said, I'd just like to take some pictures of you.
He just, is our volume up? He just,
Okay, so it's paused now.
he just said, we've been here, okay?
Right, we've been here. Go ahead.
Right, go ahead.
To your room, because she called me at 2:30 in the morning.
Yep.
You know, and she said no. She
Did
said
you put your hands on her?
no.
No?
I know better than that.
Good ID?
How about a business card?
I'll take your ID, sir.
Why?
I'm asking for your ID.
And I'm saying I don't.
Yeah,
You came
no,
into my
he
place of
doesn't accept
business. Here's my business card.
I know. Okay, let me see your ID, please.
No.
The officer just took the card.
You're not gonna give me your ID.
No.
Talk to us.
Well, let me see.
Officer Quarles, badge 40.
Okay, why? Okay, let me start recording here.
My audio is now on.
You know what?
Okay, now he just took the phone
Excuse me,
out
I
of his
said,
hand.
right now you're being detained, okay?
And there was no
What the
evidence
fuck?
of
I'm
you
resisting right now.
whatsoever.
I'm telling you. Stop resisting.
Oh no, he was grabbed. Yeah.
Rewind it.
I mean that.
Rewind it back to there.
40.
Now I'll describe what's happening.
Can we slow it up any or?
You know what? You're fine.
Okay, go
Excuse me,
back
I
before
said,
that.
right now you're being detained, okay? Let me see your ID, please.
Okay, now pause. Mr. Johnson on the right is going to hold up his phone and try to hit the record button on his cell phone. And then this officer takes it, puts it on the counter to his left, and then turns him and then attacks him to put him into handcuffs.
Okay,
now
let's watch.
start it. Here comes the phone. He gets his phone. He says, "I want to record this."
Why? I'm asking for your ID.
Oh no, that's his card, Ed.
Okay, that's the
Came into my
business
place
card.
of
You went
business.
back too far.
No, that's
Here's
fine.
my business card. I don't need to identify myself.
No.
He takes the card. I think the officer throws the card up on the
Give me
counter.
your ID.
No. Well, let me see.
Officer Quarles, badge 40.
Okay, why?
Oh, now there's the phone. I'd like to record this.
And watch the officer.
Watch the officer. He's
He's
gonna
going
record.
at him.
Take the phone, throw
Yep.
it on the
Excuse me, I
counter.
said-
Oh, there he
turn
goes.
around,
He's attacking
turn
him.
around and attack.
What the
There
fuck?
it is,
I'm
right
resisting
there.
right
officer
now.
attacked that man.
He
telling you.
attacked that man
He
in his
attacked
car.
him.
He attacked
Resisting.
him. Say it again.
That officer was not at all in fear for his safety.
The man reached in his pocket, took out his cell phone, was trying to record it, and that officer did not want to be recorded, threw the goddamn phone, took it away from him, threw the phone on the goddamn counter, turned him around, and now slams his head into that shelf.
And, isn't that what officers always say? I was in fear for my safety.
Right.
Fear for my safety.
It could have been a gun.
It could have been a gun.
It could have been a bomb.
Right.
Or like in J.C. Playford, it could have been a detonator.
But in this case, I don't think there's any evidence that this officer thought the phone was a gun.
No.
But what do you always say, Ed? Since Flatbush Avenue, back in, I don't know what year it was, when the officer Barone was at
Camera.
You said the camera.
The camera to a police officer is more damaging than a gun.
Right.
They're more afraid of the camera than they are of a gun.
And thank you, Officer Quarles, for proving that point.
So let me say something right now that we've showed this video. The state of Connecticut, this council, and the legislature is going to have a hearing.
They need to see this
They're
video.
going to have a hearing.
They need to see this video.
They're going to have a hearing. And here's what I'll say to everybody on the other side of the camera, and this goes to the J.C. Playfords, the Dave Wardens, and everybody else, News Now, everybody else who's doing audits and they go to scenes. Everybody. Every major incident that has caused a disruption in this country has been captured on video by personal cell phones. In other words, if there was not a cell phone.
Oh.
Okay?
Well, no. The body cam.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is,
Oh, I get it. Go ahead.
police officers, one of the rules that has to be put in place is that the public has an absolute right to record all police activities going on as long as they don't interfere with the activities going on. And that means physically. In other words, if you're outside of a debris area in an automobile accident, or you're outside the evidence area in a shooting, okay? If you're outside where there's there's a stabbing, there's a body laying in the road, and you're at the intersection, or you can walk up halfway to the body in the road and start filming, you're not in the evidence zone. You're not in the evidence zone or the debris field of a fatal accident. Let me record. In an arrest, let the public record. Don't try to stop them. Because when we have video, this is what the public sees.
And if it's not an arrest and you're just talking to a police officer, the officer comes into your business, approaches your home on the street, you have a right to record what's going on. And the officer should probably tell you you have a right to record what's going on. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
There was an incident a year ago in April on the Silestein Highway in Wethersfield where an individual was shot by a police officer.
April 20th.
Now, there was dash cam video.
We have that up on our
There
YouTube
was-
site.
Business video from a store that saw it, okay? Now, if there was no video whatsoever, the police officer gets to tell whatever story he wants. We don't care about, the witness in the car, yeah, the girl that was riding in the car with him, we don't believe her. She's just trying to protect everybody. No. Cameras tend not to lie. And I go back to South Carolina with the guy running. The guy got shot. They did a police report. They justified the shooting. And it must have been 7 or 11 days later, the kid comes up that shot the video and says, well, what's this? And all of a sudden, the police reports were bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay? New York, bullshit. Atlanta, bullshit.
Well, let me take you back to the 90s. When I was a prosecutor, for 8 years, and I don't remember one occasion in the thousands and thousands of cases you handle as a prosecutor, especially in the lower court, the GA. I don't remember one occasion where a defendant came in and said, I have a video or I have a recording of what happened. It just didn't happen back in the 90s. And you know what? When the defense attorney would come up to a prosecutor and say, man, they really roughed up my client, here's a picture of it, and he didn't deserve it. Prosecutors would get mad at that defense attorney. How dare you accuse one of our officers of acting like that? They're heroes. You're lying about that officer, and your client's going to suffer if you keep saying those negative things about our officers. But that's the way it used to be in the 90s. It did. If you were a defense attorney, you better not say anything negative.
To some degree, it's still that way.
To some degree,
in Mr. Johnson's case, for some reason, the prosecutorial staff in the Torrington courthouse are not dismissing his charge.
Maybe they haven't seen the video. He got it through FOI, so maybe they don't know about it.
Came from the fucking police department, but here's...
And you know what?
Listen.
Maybe Officer Quarles didn't put in his police report, I was standing there, Mr. Johnson was talking calmly, I asked for his ID, even though I knew who he was because I'd been there very often. He gave me a business card. Kind of pissed me off because I asked for an ID and not a business card. But by the way, that was my purpose, to kind of get him riled up so then I'd have an excuse to do something. And so then he told me that he was going to record me. And he raised his phone as if in a motion to hit me, or in a violent and tumultuous manner he moved. And I felt for my safety, and so I grabbed his arms and twisted him around.
After throwing his phone onto the counter.
I mean, I really do suspect that the officers' reports do not match this video. Because if they did, how could the case still be pending?
Again, 30 years ago, I'd have published the number of the Torrington, Connecticut Police Department and asked everybody on the other side of the camera to give their opinion to the police department about what they've seen on summary judgment on a Saturday afternoon, whether you live in Houston, San Diego, or wherever, Borneo.
I mean, I believe Torrington has a public safety commission.
That's a bunch of bullshit too. That's a bunch of bullshit too.
But maybe they need to be contacted.
The state wants to have a state law enforcement accountability commission that will investigate certain things.
And let's talk about when Mr. Johnson was detained. Officer Quarles must have said 2 times or 3 times, "You're being detained, not arrested." Well, officer, just because you say it doesn't make it true.
Let me explain that to you, Madam Prosecutor of 8 years. Okay? The video shows Officer Quarles on the sidewalk making a right-hand turn into the business, correct?
Okay.
Okay. It shows him confronting an individual who I guess he knew who he was looking for, and started to ask him questions or respond to questions by Mr. Johnson. Now, he said he's asking questions, he's doing all kinds of shit, he's, whatever. as he's taking him out the door in handcuffs, he says, "You're only being detained." Right? You heard that?
I did.
Okay. But he gets arrested. If he had gotten arrested for anything to do with that girl and the apartment and the rent, he walked in there knowing he was going to make an arrest. He never once read the man his rights and started asking him questions. And because of the questions and his responses with the tape recorder, he got arrested. Anything you say or do can be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to remain silent. It's not just anything you say. It's anything you say or do can be used against you in a court of law. Am I correct?
Well, I think they don't have to warn you about anything you do, because that can be used whether you're warned or not. In other words, if you aren't given Miranda warnings but you do something, that can still be used against you.
Let me tell you something. A man comes in and reads you your rights. Most people, 99% of people are going to go, zip. Just stand there and say nothing. And it doesn't appear that Johnson's stupid. He knows what's going on. The game that's being played with him, he's kind of playing with the rules. He's playing by the rules. He's saying, no, you're not going to nolly it. No, I'm not going to pay a fine. I want a jury trial. Because if a jury looks at that videotape, videotape, they're going to sit there and say, what the fuck kind of police department is Torrington?
How could you possibly think you could...
If I was Billy Baldwin, the chief, I'd be embarrassed to be the chief of the department that had an officer that did that to a local businessman.
Yep. Now, how do you feel? Well, let's not get into a different subject right now. But you said, and I know when you were watching it, you mentioned something about taking him to medical. Correct?
Yeah.
We don't know if they did or not. Maybe they did.
Stop. The minute he turned him around and saw the blood, and you can see him looking at the blood, he should have picked up, the man's handcuffed. Pick up, I need EMS here. But they're taking him to the cruiser. No, you take him to an ambulance. The first priority is the hospital. You want to accompany him to the hospital? You want to arrest him at the hospital? Do what you want. The man did not fight. The man did, in my opinion, the man did not resist.
Well, looking at the video, he didn't. He didn't resist. He was attacked.
While he was on body
cam. If anything, he was trying to prevent being hurt because that officer was kind of big.
And here's what I got to ask. Did Quarles have a body camera, yes or no?
We need to know that.
No. And why do we only have the other officer's body camera until they walk out the door? Where's the body camera of him being put in a cruiser? Is that available?
Because what happened after they walked out the door?
Well, maybe the chief is sitting there saying, well, after he got arrested, you don't get the body camera.
Well, not according to the post rules. Okay, so the next issue I want to bring up before we watch the rest of it is the whole, do you have fire, when he's patting him down for officer safety, wants to know if he has any firearms. Well, officers, when you walked in, clearly you weren't concerned about firearms when you walked in, right? And clearly when you were talking to him, you weren't concerned about firearms. And why was it when you were detaining him in handcuffs, all of a sudden you're worried about firearms? That makes no sense either. Let's play the rest of it.
And then we got to talk about Jerry Nance. Is our audio up? Watch when he turns him around and he sees the blood on his face. Quarles doesn't see it, the body camera doesn't see it, but now he turns him around. And that's when an officer would go, oh shit. Now watch. He's looking, he's looking, he's looking, he's looking. Keep watching. Up, head's gonna go around the corner. Watch. Not yet. Hold on. I know he does. But he's more concerned with emptying his pockets first. Now the blood's dripping down past his eye onto his cheek.
Other officers just standing there.
Yeah.
Spread your legs for me, please.
Hold on. Hold on.
You don't have any weapons on you at all?
No.
He saw it.
Let's go.
I need to lock the front door.
We're not going anywhere. I'm going to go sit in my car for a moment. Right now you're being detained. You understand that? You're not under arrest. You understand that?
Yes, I
Okay.
See, he just saw the face.
Yep.
Now, he may now be calling EMS. He just reached for his radio.
Also,
But why does the video end?
call on 263.
Does it keep going? No, it ends.
Maybe
Now,
maybe only posted part of it.
Yeah, I mean, Kent Johnson maybe only posted part of it, but we have 11 minutes left, and Jerry Nance
Okay,
sent
so
us an issue.
for anybody who tuned in for that segment of the show, we're going to move on to other things that we discuss, and that has to do with a case that's been brought by what's the name of the organization? Justice? Oh, shoot.
Oh no.
Judicial Watch.
Judicial Watch
has brought a lawsuit about the words painted.
Here's what happened.
Yeah.
A very prominent organization in the news now, Black Lives Matter, was able to paint on a street in Washington, D.C., which is a federal street, this big Black Lives Matter. So Judicial Watch went to the city and applied for a permit to do the same thing and was denied.
Did BLM get a permit to paint that on the street?
They may not have had a permit, but he said they permitted it. The city didn't arrest anybody. The city let it stay there. So they applied to do the same thing and were denied. And so now Judicial Watch has filed a lawsuit against the District of Columbia, and he goes like this: this is a new form of speech.
It certainly is.
Now, I go like this. I have a photograph in a computer in Master Control that I took down when the members of the House of Representatives did a sit-in on the House chamber floor. And I said, that's not their fucking house, that's my house. The states own the Senate, the people own the House. That's my floor, not their floor. Well, if they can have a sit-in on the House floor, I want to ask for permission for me to have a sit-in on the House floor. That's exactly what Judicial Watch is doing with the painting on the roads. And they're talking about streets all over the country.
Yeah, it says Judicial Watch filed for a permit to do the same, meaning to paint a slogan on a street in Washington, D.C., but they were denied. And then they filed a lawsuit for equal access to this newly created forum of speech.
Right. Now, do you have Jerry's stuff?
This is Jerry's stuff.
Jerry Nance. Is that Jerry Nance?
It is. It is. It has his name right there.
Okay, good.
And I guess
He talked about
New York City has also done the same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, New York City, they've also allowed Black Lives Matter to be painted in front of the Trump Tower. According to Judicial Watch, this constitutes ceding public property to a private organization. Now, anyone can, without a permit, exercise equal rights to the new forum, according to Judicial Watch.
And if I go down there with a can of spray paint and start doing it and I get pinched, I sue because they didn't pinch the others.
Right.
And it's based on color.
Well, do you want to get into that, Ed? We have 7 minutes. I don't mind getting into it.
Okay.
You have an opinion about signs that are going up on public property
Here's
in
what
front
I'm-
of
here's-
schools,
listen,
in Connecticut,
listen.
Black Lives Matter.
I believe that regardless of your color, you need to be treated equally. I believe that with all my heart.
And private property, people that own private property can put up whatever
But
signs they
before
want.
the Atlanta shooting,
But we're talking about public property.
but if, okay, there's a what do they call those kind of schools?
A magnet
There's
school.
a charter magnet school in the neighborhood. And that school, it's called CREC, C-R-E-C, put up a sign that says Black Lives Matter. And I said, Jesus Christ, if my memory serves me correctly, our curriculum for grammar school was to teach children that color of your skin can't make a difference. You're all equal. You're all the same. you're not one thing or another. What do the white kids think when they're pulling in on the bus to go to school and it says Black Lives Matter? Oh, well, we're going to teach the kids that Black Lives Matter. And what if, the cartoon or the public service announcement would be this: an 8-year-old girl standing by the sign going, "Don't I matter anymore?"
Okay, so we've had this conversation probably 4 or 5 times.
Well, one more
week.
aspect of it, and then
Well,
you can go
you'll
off.
No, I'm not going
A
off.
police department somewhere in Connecticut put up one of those roadside signs where they put up a message. And the officer that put up the message put up "All Lives Matter." And people called the police department and objected to it. The chief conducted an investigation, and the officer said, "Well, nobody told me what I had to put up there. I didn't put up 'All Lives Matter.'" And now, because they don't have a policy on what they can or can't say, so now they're going to come out with a policy. But I'm going to tell you right now, the people that are protesting under the banner of Black Lives Matter do not want to have a discussion. They want what they want, and they don't want to discuss it. They don't want to, like this video that we're showing today. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about white businessmen matter. They don't want to talk about it. Now, I know that you feel uncomfortable, rightly so.
I'm not, don't tell me how I feel.
Okay.
Okay? I do want to respond though.
Go ahead.
And the way I respond to this conversation is, when our Constitution was drafted, black people were specifically cited as only being 3/5 of a human being.
Right.
When this country was founded, it considered black people to be only 3/5 human.
Got it.
And white people 100%
Got
human.
it.
We've got a history of considering black people as less than human.
Ha! That cost this country over 1 million lives in the 1860s to get rid of that 2/3 or 3/5 in the Constitution.
But it's easy to get rid of that, but it's not as easy to get rid of what is in people's heads.
I got you.
And what
I
they're
agree.
taught
I
and
agree.
what they carry on.
I agree.
Okay? So when you say all Black Lives Matter, you don't have to point out that white lives matter, because this country has always acted like white lives matter. But you do have to point out, given what happened in Minnesota, given what happens all over the country, that black lives matter. That's the theory, okay? And I get that theory. But on the other hand, I think Black Lives Matter makes a huge mistake when especially if they are mainly focused on police accountability, when they don't include everybody who suffers because of police officers who were bad actors. They exclude people like Kent Johnson. They exclude a lot of people because a lot of it comes down to economics. A police officer would not go into an area like Devonwood, which the average house is probably a couple $1 million,
Right.
and treat somebody like they treated Kent Johnson. They wouldn't dare.
Right.
They would not dare to treat somebody with money that way. They wouldn't dare. Officer Quarles, I dare you to treat anybody who lives in a prominent, wealthy community, to treat them like you treated Kent Johnson. I dare you, but don't do it because it's bad, and you're an officer and you're supposed to uphold the Constitution. But that's where, and so when you say all lives matter, it's looked at as racist.
Of course it's looked at as racist.
It's looked
They
at as
want
racist.
a one-sided conversation.
And you know what I think too? And I think that when white people go around saying Black Lives Matter, it's almost has the opposite effect. It's almost like pandering. It's almost like, oh, I think your life matters.
Do
you know what? If I were black,
do me a
if
favor.
I were black, I wouldn't want a white person telling me my life matters. I'd be like, I know my life matters. Shut up. I don't know why any black person wants a white person telling them their life matters.
Okay. What does the word inclusion mean? Bringing it all together, correct?
Right.
All right. So you gotta take the black and the white and include it into the
Well,
word
everybody.
all.
Everybody.
All. Where is the outrage in the black community about black-on-black violence in Chicago?
Yeah.
Where is it?
It needs to be.
There's
there.
more people killed in Chicago
than there are by police officers in the United States, and there's more people, and it's on a weekend.
And President Obama, I told you after you got out of office, you needed to go back to Chicago where they made you.
Run
made
for
it
mayor,
possible,
run for governor, and straighten the place out.
and you need to fix Chicago.
We are so out of time.
We're out of time.
Listen,
Join us next week at 2 o'clock.
next week, and you know,
Bye.
we'll have another topic.